The Gods of Eden by William Bramley. Who controls human destiny? What is the Brotherhood of the Snake? Why was the Black Death, which devastated the population of Europe, accompanied by an unparalleled number of UFO sightings? How did the establishment of the Bank of England lead to revolution and genocide in France? Do the world's major religions teach the truth, or have they all been subtly corrupted? What is the role of secret societies in contemporary world events, and who controls these societies? William Bramley originally set out to research the history of human warfare. What he uncovered was a secret more destructive and terrifying than anyone could possibly imagine: the Gods of Eden. 1. The search begins. When I first began researching the origins of human warfare, certainly the first thing from my mind were unidentified flying objects, better known as UFOs. The many flying saucer magazines which once graced the newsstands were, in my opinion, not worthy of serious consideration. I also did not feel that the UFO phenomenon was terribly important, even if it was evidence of an extraterrestrial race. Solving the down-to-earth problems of war and human suffering seems so much more important than arguing over whether or not little green men from Mars might occasionally be visiting Earth. I began researching this book in 1979. However, my desire to see an end to war arose much earlier in life. At just about the age of 8, back then, war movies were very popular in my circle of friends. Our favorite game was playing Army. I usually commanded one squad of kids, and my friend David led the opposition. We filled our imaginary battles with the same glamour and altruism we saw on television. We had no greater hero than the late actor Vic Morrow, who would gallantly lead his army squad to victory every week on the television series Combat. One Saturday afternoon, I was watching a Hollywood war movie on television. It was like any other war movie except that it contained a short piece of numbing realism. For the first time in my life, I found myself looking at documentary film footage of an actual Nazi concentration camp. Long after the images vanished off the television screen, I was haunted by the pictures of skeleton-like bodies being thrown into large pits. Like so many other people, I had trouble fathoming the souls of the Nazis, who could shove human beings into brick ovens like loaves of bread and moments later pulled out the charred remains. Within a minute, those grainy black and white images presented a true picture of war. Behind the curt salutes and stirring oratory, war is a little but a degraded psychosis. While war movies and games can sometimes be fun, the real thing is unconsociable. For centuries, scientists and thinkers have attempted to solve the riddle of why people go to war. They have observed that nearly all of Earth's creatures fight among themselves at one time or another, usually over food, territory, or mating. Aggression seems to be a universal behavior related to survival. Other factors also contribute to the creation of wars. The analyst must take into consideration such variables as human psychology, sociology, political leadership, economic conditions, and the natural surroundings. Many thinkers, however, have erroneously equated all human motives with motives found in the animal kingdom. This is a mistake because intelligence breeds complexity. As creatures rise in intelligence, their motivations tend to become more elaborate. It is easy to understand the mental stimuli in two alley cats squabbling over a scrap of food, but it would be a mistake to attribute as simple a state of mind to a terrorist planting a bomb in an airport. I began this study as the result of a single idea I had encountered. The concept is certainly not a new one, and at first it seems narrow in scope. The idea is nevertheless quite important because it addresses a motivation which can only be formulated by creatures of high intelligence. War can be its own valuable commodity. The simple existence of violent conflict between groups of people can, in itself, be valuable to someone regardless of the issues over which people are fighting. An obvious example is an armaments manufacturer selling military hardware to warring nations, or a lending institution making loans to governments during wartime. Both can achieve an economic benefit from the mere existence of war, as long as the violence does not directly touch them. The value of war as a commodity extends well beyond monetary gain. War can be an effective tool for maintaining social and political control over a large population. In the 16th century, Italy consisted of numerous independent principalities which were often at war with one another. When a prince conquered a neighboring city, he would sometimes breed internal conflicts among the vanquished citizens. This was an effective way to maintain political control over the people because the endless squabbling prevented the vanquished people from engaging in unified action against the conqueror. It did not greatly matter over what issues the people bickered so long as they valiantly struggled against one another and not against the conquering prince. A state of war can also be used to encourage populations to think in ways that they would not otherwise do, and to accept the formation of institutions that they would normally reject. The longer a nation involves itself in wars, the more entrenched those institutions and ways of thinking will become. Most comprehensive history books contain brief references to this type of manipulative third-party activity. It is no secret, for example, that prior to the American Revolution, France had sent intelligence agents to America to stir up colonial discontent against the British Crown. It is also no secret that the German military had aided Lenin and the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution of 1917. Throughout all of history, people and nations have benefited from and have contributed to the existence of other people's conflicts. Intrigued by these concepts, I resolved to do a study to determine just how important the third-party factor has been in human history. I wanted to discover what common threads, if any, may have existed between various third-party influences in history. It was my hope that this study would offer added insights into how and by whom history has been made. What resulted from this modest goal was one of the most extraordinary odysseys I have ever taken. The trail of investigation wove through a complex labyrinth of remarkable facts, startling theories, and everything in between. As I dug ever deeper, a common thread did emerge. To my chagrin, it was a thread so bizarre that on at least 2 occasions I terminated my research in disgust. As I pondered my predicament, I realized something important. Rational minds tend to seek rational causes to explain human problems. As I probed deeper, however, I was compelled to face the possibility that some human problems may be rooted in some of the most utterly bizarre realities imaginable, because such realities are rarely acknowledged, let alone understood. They are not dealt with. As a result, the problems those realities generate are rarely resolved, and so the world seems to stumble from one calamity to the other. Chapter 2. Orientation. Husband to wife. Look at this, honey. It says here that the Earth travels 595 million miles around the sun every year at a speed of 66,000 miles per hour. At the same time, the Earth is rotating around the center of the galaxy. The galaxy is traveling endlessly through space and is pulling the Earth along with it. Now, how can you say we never go anywhere? Hello and welcome. This is our planet Earth. Before starting our journey through history, let us take a brief look at our little space orb from the vantage point of newcomers undergoing a brief orientation. Spaceship Earth, as some people like to call it, is a relatively small celestial body. The American Space Shuttle can completely orbit the Earth in only 90 minutes. In modern aircraft, the crossing of once formidable oceans has become little more than a dull routine for many an airborne business person plying his or her trade between continents. By merely picking up a telephone and dialing, one can speak instantly to someone on the opposite side of the globe. We are all witnesses to the remarkable manner in which high-speed travel and telecommunications make contact between distant points on Earth quickly and easily manageable. Earth is not only small, it is also quite remote. If you and I were to take a position outside of the Milky Way galaxy, we would see that the Earth is near the galaxy's outer edge. In addition, the Milky Way is dwarfed by much larger galaxies. This isolated location might help explain why Earth has so few contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations, if such civilizations exist. Earth is afloat in the distant boondocks of a minor galaxy. Despite its isolation, Earth is pretty, and it is inhabited. As of this writing, the human population numbers over 5 billion people. Add to that figure all of the other large mammals, and we find that the lands and waters of Earth are occupied by an enormous population of intelligent and semi-intelligent creatures. What kind of animals are human beings? As a student of biology can quickly tell you, humans constitute the animal species known as Homo sapiens. The word homo comes from the Latin word for man, and sapiens means being wise or sensible. The label Homo sapiens therefore denotes a creature possessed of wisdom or sensibility. Most Homo sapiens do live up to their title, by and large, although a small number obviously do not. When dealing with a human being, are we only confronting an animal? As it turns out, we are not. It appears that we are faced with something much more important, a spiritual being. The idea that there is a spiritual reality to life is ageless. Some religions have held the belief for millennia that human bodies are mere puppets animated by spiritual beings. Often accompanying this tenet are doctrines concerning reincarnation or an afterlife. In the Christian religion, the word soul has long been used to denote a spiritual entity which survives the death of the physical body. Some people claim that an ancient wisdom about the spirit had once existed. If such a wisdom ever did exist, it long ago became hopelessly bemuddled by countless false ideas. Strange mystical beliefs and practices, incomprehensible symbolism, and erroneous scientific teachings. As a result, the subject of the spirit is today almost unstudyable. On top of that, many scholars trained in Western scientific methods reject the idea of a soul entirely, apparently because they cannot put a spirit under a microscope and watch it squiggle, or plant electrodes in it and give it a jolt. A good fortune would have it, some breakthroughs on the subject have been made within recent decades. Evidence that every person is a unique spiritual being is strong indeed. Volumes of fascinating testimony have been gathered from people who have undergone so-called near-death experiences. During such episodes, many people undergo the sensation of leaving their bodies, especially as their bodies approach death. Some psychiatrists argue that this phenomenon is nothing more than a self-protective illusion of the mind. It is not as simple as that. Many near-death victims are able to perceive their bodies from an accurate exterior perspective. They retain their complete self-awareness and personal identity even though their bodies are unconscious. In light of such testimony, it is not surprising that a few religions such as Buddhism believe that people are immortal spiritual beings which become enmeshed in bodies during life. Buddhists conclude that this is caused, at least in part, by the spirit's long-term interaction with the physical universe. In sharp contrast to psychiatric theory, Buddhists teach that spiritual separation from the body is the healthiest state for human beings, and Buddhists seek to attain that separation without suffering physical trauma or death. Their goal is encouraged by the belief that a spiritual being can operate a body as well, or better from outside a body as from within. The definition of a spiritual being shared by several religions appears to be the most accurate one. A spiritual being is an entity possessed of awareness, creativity, and personality. It is not composed of matter or of any other component of the physical universe. It appears instead to be an immortal unit of awareness which cannot perish, although it can become entrapped by physical matter. The spiritual being is fully capable of understanding itself. The modern trend, of course, is to view the brain as the center of awareness and personality. Scientists have been able to electrically stimulate specific parts of the brain to produce the psychological manifestations of many human emotions. This, however, reveals the brain to be nothing more than a sophisticated switchboard capable of being activated by a variety of external sources, such as by an experimenter with his electrodes, or even perhaps by a spiritual being with its own energy output. The interaction between a spiritual entity and the body's central nervous system appears to be so intimate that a change in one can often influence the behavior of the other. From all of this emerges a picture indicating that human beings are spiritual entities who enjoy a certain spiritual immorality, but who are usually unaware of it until an unexpected separation occurs. During life, spiritual beings tend to utilize almost exclusively the perceptions of the physical body. Death, according to this analysis, is little more than spiritual abandonment of the body during a time of intense physical or sometimes even mental injury. What does all of this have to do with human warfare? Almost everything, as we shall see. That brings us to the third and final topic of our orientation, UFOs. There are few subjects today as full of false information, deceit, and madness as flying saucers. Many earnest people who attempt to study the subject are driven around in circles by a terrific amount of dishonesty from a small number of people who, for the sake of a fleeting moment or notoriety, or with the deliberate intention to obfuscate, have clouded the field with false reports, untenable explanations, and fraudulent evidence. Suffice it to say that behind this smokescreen there is ample evidence of extraterrestrial visitations to Earth. This is too bad. An in-depth study of the UFO phenomenon reveals that it does not offer a happy little romp through the titillating unknown. The UFO appears more and more to be one of the grimmest realities ever confronted by the human race. Keeping the points of our brief orientation in mind, let us now begin a deeper probe.